January the 7th. And that means that's right. 2023 has left the building and we have changed the locks. And it's time to jump into the rotation and figure it all out. We have been off the air for a couple of weeks now. It's just that
a whole month, I believe.
That holiday season where absolutely nothing gets done. Is that the gift we get from a religion? Is an entire month of nothing getting done at the end of the fiscal year yet, where people are scrambling to make certain that they don't have to pay things for this year from last year's money and all that kind of good
Gary,
stuff.
believe it or not, you don't need religion to be lazy. You can just be lazy, dude.
Well, we're back at 1714 East 7th Street in Ybor City, where it all began, where the head of Prohibition reared its ugly head, and we're trying to sever it as we speak. And we are the masters of cannabis here at Suncoast Normal. I am Gary Stein, your political director and master of public health. And to my right, your left, I think, is Carlos Armida, our master of business administration and the proud owner of Chillum CBD and mushroom dispensary most of the time.
That's that right there.
Yeah, that's right. In Ybor City and in the new location in St. Pete. Mm-hmm. And to my right is our executive director, who's coming to us from above the Beltway, where he hits them below the Beltway, Chris Cano. And we have a very special guest today who is coming to us all the way from, where are you? Are you in Jacksonville or?
Yep, I'm up in
Jacksonville, where Duval County, where everything is great all the time. I'm just kidding. Anyways, let me do a little background here. We have had a rather stable market here in Florida as far as cannabis is concerned since 2015, when we first gave out those first licenses. We actually had like 22 people, 25 people who applied, and eventually they all got licenses. But the ones who got it towards the end really weren't even prepared, because they were losers in the first place because their applications weren't good enough. And so they sold off their licenses. But the good thing is that our government kept it stable by making certain we don't have a single new license since 2015, which was before the actual medical cannabis industry started. So we've got the same number of people. And for a long time, we had a number of those MMTCs that sat on their licenses and didn't really move forward, either because they weren't prepared or they weren't actually going to do anything. They were just trying to up the evaluation and then sell it off again. So we're starting to get to the stable point right now, and we're starting to get actually good licensees, like this, good dispensaries out of those other licenses. Eventually, it's all the market is kind of catching up to it through the free market system. I would hope. Is that about right? You'd say that the free market system?
You lost me. I have no idea what you're talking
about. Well, what I'm talking about is the free market system, the invisible hand. If Adam Smith ever even said that, basically says that the invisible hand of the market will adjust everything. The good players will go up, the bad players will go down, but that doesn't always work. I mean, we do have one particular dispensary, Truly, that has been there from the very beginning, and they're here now. They haven't changed. They bought another company. They're buying another company, I do believe, but they've been here, but they're not the best. And we're looking for the other ones to get better. And to that end, we have Tom Grebenstein, who is here from Jacksonville, Duval County over there, where he at first was with Tikkun Olam, with the Israeli company, and then with Oliverde, and now he is taking charge of Green Dragon, who I first found when our events director, Carla, said, they are selling Ace for $1. You got to go out and see this. So I did, and I got a chance to dive into Green Dragon and see how things were going. But obviously, that was then. And my guest, Carlos, Tom, you're the future. Is that correct?
Uh, That's a pretty big hat to wear. I don't know that that's the case, but we certainly are trying to change the way that we're servicing the Florida market and be a partner for the patients that are here.
Now, your license actually started out with Del Rosa bromeliads, and of course, what says I know how to cultivate cannabis like cultivating parasitic flowers, right? Which is basically what bromeliads are.
Yep, and so, like so many of the other ornamental grows, that got changed over here in Florida. Not exactly the most ideal circumstance for growing cannabis in a bromeliad greenhouse.
I know that Sanctuary Medicinals was a rose farm, and they said, well, if you grow roses, you obviously know how to grow cannabis. Not quite right, I don't think. Uh,
And it's the same blueberries, tomatoes, poinsettias. So many of these businesses came up out of that industry.
well, I learned everything I know about cannabis from him growing tomatoes and peppers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, that's how it started. I did a little more research after that. But the fact is, we all started outside of the industry, except for those people who in the legacy industry were doing it for a long time under the guise of we might get arrested under RICO laws at any moment, kind of thing. But they're all out there, and we're hoping that the expertise from the past gets into the future where it is hopefully legal, at least within the regulated atmosphere that we have here in Florida. Do you see that as been a hindrance, or you think that is a positive in regards to this industry?
I think it's a positive. I mean, I think that regulation is what keeps, all the MMTCs honest. Having to adhere to rigorous testing methodology as well as, going through the same set of rules for all MMTCs. It keeps us honest. It makes us ensure that we're delivering a quality and safe product to the end user consumer here in Florida. And I think that sets up a great foundation of the industry for moving into an adult use environment here, hopefully in the next year or two.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about keeping folks honest in the industry, Tom, because the fact is that there are certain players in the Florida market and operating in other states that are not honest, and they're trying to do everything they can to put you out of business, to dominate market share by bribing politicians to put forward moratoriums on adding and licensing additional MMTCs with zoning laws and such. And that's a major concern for us at Normal, because we see ourselves, as the always been on the side of the consumer. We've been fighting for the civil rights of marijuana consumers for over 50 years, and the fact is that the way the legal market is shaped up in Florida is not the vision of freedom that we saw. And so, Tom, could you share a little bit about what you think a free adult market that is really catering to the patient, to the consumer, should look like, and how do you plan to model Green Dragon after that vision that you have?
I think that the legal market in Colorado has been incredibly successful. With home grow, with a legacy medical market that has come through many iterations and still continues to service the patient population, while allowing the high standard of testing and execution that's required by the state there. So I would really like to see Florida follow down that same path. I don't understand the reticence to home grow. Hey, I can grow tomatoes at home. I don't. I buy them at the store because I'm lazy, right? But so I think there is a lot to be said for allowing home grow and the freedom that comes with personal selection and election, that has been so successful in Colorado. I was reading an article this morning that said, 99% of recreational purchases through the Colorado market are done so through a legal dispensary. And I would love to see that happen here in Florida, where we evolve and can be in a position to eliminate, the need for an illicit market.
I wonder if there's like some sort of statistic on like the amount of cannabis consumers that want to grow at home. Like, is it just like, because we've never really seen that. We've never seen like, oh, there's like 30% of people who consume cannabis want to grow it in their house. You know what I mean? And like that would lead to this amount of profits taken out of the market. I don't think that's a really big statistic. I think, I hate to call cannabis consumers lazy, but I think cannabis
Well, they are
consumers
stoners.
cannabis consumers have a life to live, and and they don't want to spend all their time growing weed. They just want to buy it at the store.
See, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I think that the consumer deserves the right to make that election for themselves, right? Whether they're actually going to exercise that right or not remains to be seen. I'm sure, we'll see a boom of home grow if and when it is permitted, and it'll tail off because of the convenience factor of purchasing cannabis from a
I
dispensary.
I think it's better
Um,
to, rather than saying like cannabis consumers are lazy, I think it's better just to be like Americans are lazy. Like that's just kind of you know what I mean? Like Americans, we care about our job, we care about our commute to work, we care about the gas prices, but we're not really, some people have a garden and that's a novelty, but that's a small percentage of
Well, no,
people,
Carlos. I mean, part.
Like, I'm not
No, no,
saying
no.
I'm
I
gonna
think
do
part
that.
of it is that there's yes, there is some laziness in American privilege that we have. The other part, though, is actually access to real resources, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, you can purchase seeds with your food stamps in America, right? But how many poor people have the infrastructure to actually grow a garden, right? Especially if you live in an
Yeah.
apartment. And so that's also the same thing that we have when it comes to cannabis is who's got the money to start an indoor grow that could run you anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 to really get a good indoor grow running with the right lighting, the buckets, the setup, the watering systems, the grow tents, and then you have all the different zoning laws that come into effect. You can't just start home growing if you have a landlord. You can't start home growing if you're in public housing. So it really does make the home grow market, when you add in the politics behind it, really only accessible to the middle and upper classes.
What Tom was saying before, I could get tomatoes, I could by growing them in my garden, but I choose to buy them at the store, quite honestly, I'm at the point where I choose to get somebody from Uber Eats to deliver it to my footstep. But
Is there an Uber Tokes yet? Not yet.
it was GoPuff, and now it's like pretty commercialized.
Mm.
But the Gary Angel, the magical butter, the great cannabis entrepreneur of Florida, Gary Angel, magical butter and all that stuff. He's had a big impact on the cannabis industry as a whole, and now he's concentrating on making it easy to grow cannabis at home. I think that's a big character, an entrepreneur that like Gary Angel sees that there's a need there. We got to make growing at home easy. Like I think that's a big gauge, and like people don't really necessarily want to
Carlos, hold on. If he
No,
wants to make growing at home easy, he needs to stop supporting politicians that don't support home grow. That's the paradox I don't get. You wanna make home grow easy for everyone, and then you support Ron DeSantis. Get the fuck out of here.
you bring up a good point, Kano, but let's not talk about that for now. Let's just talk about growing at home.
Okay. Well, let me just say that if any poll goes out there where you ask people, would you want to grow your own? You really need to put also in there, have you ever tried to grow your own?
Yeah.
Because that will actually change the answer
Yes,
for many
yes,
people.
many times and failed horribly.
I mean, it's labor intensive, it's fun, it's money intensive, and it requires a little bit of actual intelligence. It's not a matter of just throwing seeds in the ground and seeing what grows, because then you get genuine weeds.
Well, all my friends who grow in legal states, it's a full-time job. They don't leave the house. They go to school online. They only leave the house for minor things. I mean, they're literally always over their crop, like a newborn baby. So there's a level of attention that comes into being a master grower.
and come to think of it, Tom, I realize we're not giving you much time
That's all
to talk
good.
here, but come to think of it, the short time that I lived in California, a lot of dispensaries out there, were catering to the grower market. They were growing clones and selling clones. You know what I mean? Like I could go to Harborside Health Center. We had Andrew D'Angelo on the show before. I could go to Harborside Health Center. I could get a tincture. I could get some RSO oil. I could get some bud, and I could get a clone. You know what I mean? Like I could get all of those different things without a problem.
You're right, and
Um,
in really great locations, you can also have access to genetics that are just insane. Like, for example, if you happen to be up in Massachusetts and walk into a canna provision store, you can buy a clone directly from ChemDog, and take that home and grow it yourself. So,
I
sorry,
mean,
little plug
that's so
there. If you
crazy.
happen to be in Massachusetts for canna provisions, they're great people, but where else can you? What other industry can you walk into and literally be able to take something from a legend like ChemDog, bring it home and grow it on your own? I think that's a
What
pretty amazing
what do
thing.
you think the possibility is, Tom, of the cannabis industry in Florida? It's probably low, but the cannabis industry in Florida, instead of lobbying to take away home grow, to allow home grow, and then that opens up a whole nother market that they can cater to allow them to cater to that home grow market. Like, do you think that we could prove maybe that there's like a whole nother area of profits for these people and then convince them to be greedy and throw their money at that?
I don't know that it's even will it be a tremendously profitable line item in a dispensary to have clones available? I don't know that it is. I don't think that it's a real big profit center or anything like that. But Florida, more so than any other state, has evolved as a community. I mean, look at what we've got, the hoops we have to jump through to be able to participate in the cannabis market, right? You've got $500-600 a year to maintain a card. You really need to want to be part of this group of folks, the 860,000 of us or so that do so. So I think if anything, it's really just a touch point between the dispensary and the consumer to be able to say, hey, you want to, as a hobbyist, grow cannabis, and we're here to support, your desire to do that. I really don't understand why any MMTC dispensary chain at all would really want to exclude the members of the community from doing something they enjoy.
What about facilitating? Because like we have a comment here that doesn't require funds if you're part of a good group. What about for MMTCs facilitating that group? In Cali, you could be a part of that group by paying a monthly fee.
Yeah, I mean,
Co-op.
I really just think it's more as simple as providing the education of what it takes to actually grow cannabis at the dispensary level. We can provide clones, we can teach classes, we can provide access to growing media and things of that nature. And will we make a little bit of money on it? I mean, we might make a little bit. Obviously, we have to keep the lights on and things of that nature. But I don't see, as I said, it being a huge revenue stream for any MMTC. But I think it is
Well,
essential.
I see that our Florida market as evolving and becoming a little bit more intelligent, a little more sophisticated as we go beyond. Like when we first got Straterra and True Leave as the first dispensaries that were out there growing, we said, "Oh wow, look at that fantastic flower they shoved into little tiny ceramic cups and put a cap on it, and you're not supposed to crack them open, so you never do that because if you do, you find out you get a little cube of mold that you found out you're actually vaping at that point in time." And so that's what we were dealing with. That's what we had. We had tincture. Everybody was thrilled with just having tincture. Then all of a sudden we had flour. And then all of a sudden,
I hit mine with a hammer.
but the point is, yeah, that is just your typical way of handling things. You're supposed to use a walnut cracker. Anyways, the point is, we were satisfied with whatever we could possibly get at that point in time. Then we started to realize, wait a minute, they're selling us boof. This is why I can't understand why they even came up with a damn new cultivar called Super Boof. I mean, why would you want to promote that kind of situation? We would like to prefer to have a better product because when we finally come to the realization that growing is hard and you want to have the convenience of being able to go to the store and get a product that is specifically gauged towards your needs or at least is of higher quality than you can grow at home, that would be the important thing. But we had a closed market that was not interested in improving themselves at that point in time because the other guys weren't coming online. What was the issue in regards to Green Dragon? Why did it take them so long since they bought the original Vermilion license to go online, cultivate, and start putting out? What, 36 stores now? That's obviously an evolution.
37. We just had Holly Hill approved on Friday. So yeah, I mean, when we first purchased the license, our grow facility, our indoor more complex facility was not ready yet, and obviously there's a lot of money that goes into putting together an indoor facility. So we had we had grown in a mixed light facility that was not tailored for cannabis. And to be honest with you, we put out some really shitty weed. And it's just the way it was. I mean, a terrible environment, no climate control, and just stuff that we had to produce cannabis in order to maintain the license. Since then, we've started producing cannabis out of our new facility in Palatka, which is full indoor, full LED, really, really wonderful 10,000 square foot rooms that we're able to tune in. And even that, getting quality cannabis out of that facility has taken a little bit of time to dial in the environment and get the right genetics that are really proper for it. And we're really starting to see that now. Candidly, we also we had some packaging issues. So we were producing really incredible cannabis out of the grow, come out of cure and just looking fantastic. Package it up, 10 days later, buy it at the dispensary, and it looks like pencil shavings. So we've had to take some time to reevaluate how we package things and moving a lot more to glass jars and hand trim and hand pack and giving that level of attention. And we're able to do that because if you've been into one of our stores, we keep the stores really basic. We're not going and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on, skateboard decks and DJ booths and pool tables and things like that. We're instead dumping that money back into the cost of cultivation so that we can keep our prices as low as possible. And now we're starting to deliver the quality along with that price point.
I think people are tired of going into a cannabis. I know I got my cookie shirt on, but I think people are tired of going into a dispensary and it looking like an Apple store. I think there was a time when it was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's a real clean place. But at this point in time, I think people are starting to put a level of distrust behind that type of environment.
I mean, I think that was pretty much set up to impress the legislators. And the regulators, as opposed to the actual target audience of the people who actually are the users. Yeah. I don't think they were as impressed as the folks in Tallahassee.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you go to places like Colorado, some of the best dispensaries are in like a warehouse district, and you get a little nervous walking through the parking lot into the dispensary, and then you get in there and it's the way it's shaped out and laid out into a room, and then just some dude with dreadlocks behind the counter, like, yes, what man,
I forget the comedian's name, but I just saw this yesterday where he's like, I want to go to the dispensary, and it's just some dude that's on the couch just waiting there. And it's like he the name of the dispensary should change to whoever's clocked in at the
time. Well, Tom, I do want to say one thing. I applaud you for coming on and keeping it real with us in the challenges that you all did have, and telling the truth behind it, and that you all have made those changes. We really appreciate that. You did touch on one thing around packaging, and this is something that is near and dear to me, as an environmentalist. The amount of waste that the cannabis industry produces, and it's because of the way it's regulated, right? I mean, how much plastic is the cannabis industry wasting and using? And then think about the issue of microplastics and leaching into the medicine, over time and such. So, Are there any thoughts that you have, moving forward as to how the industry can address this? Is it a recycling program? Is it, 5 cents if you bring old containers back? Is there a way to really address the amount of waste that the cannabis industry is producing? Does it go back to the politicians, or can the industry itself do something to self-regulate?
Well, I think, first of all, we need the flexibility to be able to put our money where our mouth is, and to me that says hemp plastic, which currently in Florida we can't use hemp plastic for packaging because it constitutes a mixed media type item, which the state does not want us to do. So I would love to be able to use more hemp plastics. We have looked at certain and excited about finding vendors that are using harvested ocean plastic, that's being repurposed. But the biggest problem that I really just don't know how to solve, because it's a real disparity between the consumer's desires and environmental impact, is all-in-one vapes. I personally, I loathe them. I mean, I understand they're convenient, but we're putting so many batteries back into the garbage stream. However,
I see.
the
Disposable
consumer
vapes,
base
exactly.
just demands them. So you're in this quandary here where it's like, okay, do we meet the need of the consumer and the desire of the consumer, or do we, look at the environmental impact? So we are investigating, how can we do things with battery recycling, a take back program for destruction of those all-in-ones and whatnot. But you still have to depend on the consumer to be forward thinking enough to bring it in. And do we want to incentivize them? Of course we do, because we don't want those things entering the garbage stream. But it's a huge issue. You're right, man. I mean, especially, look at how edibles are packaged in Florida, where you have to have an inner package and an outer package, even though the outer package is likely significant enough, has the child resistance on it. But the state says, no, we want an inner package in addition to that outer package, even if that inner package doesn't will add anything to the child safety factor of the actual the packaging. So I don't know, man. I think we need certainly more influence on the environmental side within the regulatory framework here. I would also say, look at through in cultivation, rock wool, a huge environmental impact. We made the decision not to grow in rock wool, and even though it's a easy and convenient thing to grow in, but the environmental impact of rock wool is huge. Instead, we grow in a proprietary soil blend that we're able to compost and not create any waste through that stream of our cultivations or cultivation operations.
I'm expecting to see disposable Teslas in the very near future. Where after it runs out of gas or electricity, just drop it off at Elon Musk's house and he gives you a new one. It's something to that effect, or just trash it, because that's probably some of the best ideas I had heard.
Well,
But
Gary, I'm glad Tom mentioned about those one-time vapes and such. I think prohibition has a lot to do with that too. The single like Pac-Man vapes, they look no different than a vape that you could buy at a corner store or a bodega. That has nicotine in it. The other thing is that when you have a battery and you have a glass vape, and this is one of the reasons that folks in my family switched over to the single use ones. You sit down and it breaks in your pocket. A lot of those single use vapes, they're resistant to breaking because they're just one big piece of plastic essentially. With the capsule inside. So I think design has a lot to do with it, and I think prohibition also has a lot to do with it. But Tom, just the fact that you're forward thinking enough is telling us, I think Green Dragon's headed in the right direction.
Guys, I sound like a broken record here, but it has to do with Americans being lazy.
what's a record?
Well, I think too.
One thing we can look at is the nicotine side of things. Like, who do you know now that carries around that big ass fucking mod anymore? You know what I mean? Like, they don't really do that anymore. They come and they buy their
disposable
elf bars and their elf bars and their fumes and shit.
Well, there's a reason why PAX separated from Juul, right? I think they saw the writing on the wall as far as how Juul was kind of destroying our industry as well as their own by pushing more disposables.
Advertising the kids.
advertising the kids too. Yeah.
That was flat out advertising to kids. Places like Green Dragon, I think, are should worry a lot less. I'm just tired of that argument. Like, I'm tired of being like, we got to protect the kids, because like it really is costing us a lot. I don't think places like Green Dragon allow 21 and under unless they have a guardian. And places like Chillum don't either. So like I think we have to worry a little bit less, but it's still like that hemp bill came out and we're still dealing with these kids things.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, Carlos, and stay on that. Normal has produced some studies that have come out that show that kids don't have access in legal states as much as they would. Plenty of kids have been surveyed saying that their ability to get access to cannabis goes down in legal states. We're seeing teen use going down. That cannabis is not necessarily the cool teen drug anymore, if you will, which is both alarming and positive in several ways. But that being said, Tom, you said something earlier about the whole, maybe it's not really a moneymaker to sell clones and such, but the fact that you should have the option to do it. How do you feel about you all selling novel cannabinoids like Delta 8, Delta 10? Is that the same opinion? Like, maybe we sell it, but it's not our thing, or do you think that there is a lane for the hemp businesses like Carlos's to take that market share?
I think that it really needs to. I wouldn't say that the current system is 100% effective in the delineation between, a Delta 9 focused business versus, the D8 and D10 type organizations. But I think that delineation is a good thing. I'm struggling to really verbalize my thought here, to be honest with you. But
We don't have any FCC rules here, so you could go ahead and throw in some expletives if you like.
it's listen. The Farm Bill has opened up a huge spectrum of businesses that are doing a lot of things for a lot of communities across the country that have access to this entirely new industry, and I think that's a wonderful thing. It's got there have been a lot of jobs created, a lot of access in regressive states has been created through the advent of Delta 8 and Delta 10 being derived from the hemp market. I think that then, though, is essential that you have scrupulous providers of that information or of those products like Chillum, that are paying attention to things like extraction methodology, to getting clean products, to testing and things of that nature. Regulation is a pain to deal with, but it does bring good things like consumer safety. And I think that if there is a very wide market for D8 and D10, independent of the dispensary system, assuming it's being done in positive extraction and safety environment. I don't think that there's ever a reason for MMTCs to get involved in that. There's enough space to be covered within the D9 framework that we don't need to confuse ourselves with those things. I do think there is a drastic need in Florida for production of D9 containing strains that also have minor cannabinoid factions that are recognizable, which we're not seeing a lot of that breeding done right now. We're not seeing a lot of CBN or CBG or, CBC is, of course, the new buzz. We're just not seeing anybody bother to try to fraction out those items here in Florida, which I'm excited to do and see what we can bring with other minor cannabinoids that we can grow in-house.
Yeah, people don't realize that folks with like, for instance, glaucoma, they need a strain with more CBG in it because that reduces intraocular pressure. And those kind of extras you get from those minor cannabinoids can be definitely a plus when you're talking about a medical market, because these are items that actually do attack certain things that we are trying to attack in regards to disabling conditions, which is the reason we have a market in the first place. We don't have a quote unquote recreational adult use market right now. It's supposed to be still a medical market, and therefore I would like to see a lot more medical products coming out. A product which can actually say this is good for migraines, because you sure as heck can't get that information from the bud tenders. I mean, you ask them about a particular situation you have, and you get deer in the headlights, or you get, hey man, this will really knock you out, which is, all wonderful. I can also do that with a hammer, right, Chris or Carlos?
You just call me Chris.
Well, Gary, I think you bring up a good point. Is that a bud tender themselves would have to have a medical card, and then they would have to be a patient. So that's all to actually be able to tell you from firsthand experience. It's
If I could interject here, I want to bring it back to the hemp point of things. I want to make a pretty clear point, that part of the reason why the hemp industry exists. Kenna left because is he scared? No, I think part of the reason why the hemp side of things exists, part of the reason why we use the farm bill to provide hemp based cannabinoids, is because the regulations behind the cannabis market are so scrupulous, and to get into that market is so goddamn difficult. I've said it plenty of times before, right? I would not be in the hemp business if I could have a medical marijuana dispensary. That is quite simply what it is. I think what the farm bill did, putting this line in between what hemp is and what cannabis is, it helped a lot of people out in the end. I think there's people that take advantage of that, of course, but I think a lot of people have access to things that they didn't have access to before. But I think at the end of the day, if we just decriminalize marijuana, right, I think me and Tom would be able to get a job at the same fucking place. You know what I mean? And we would be working together to provide medicine for people to become healthy.
Well,
And I think that's important that we realize that. I don't think we should really go after any particular hemp company, and I don't think we should go after. I mean, and unless you lobby against the hemp industry, I don't think the cannabis company is to blame for trying to destroy the hemp, whatever.
I think the American
but-
consumer, though, they have an expectation of safety and an expectation of quality when they buy something from a retail environment. They don't expect that their romaine lettuce is going to have mouse droppings in it. They expect it just to have romaine lettuce in it. That kind of situation.
But part of the reason why Chillum is still around is because shitty hemp companies have gone out of business. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of hemp companies in Tampa that couldn't hit, and I've seen them go down because they were crap, and we're still here because people trust us. We're good at marketing, and we're good at branding ourselves properly, and one thing that's great about how great we are at branding ourselves properly is that we're not shitty. It's pretty easy to brand ourselves. We're not making shitty moves against our consumers. So,
well, the third rail for a lot of companies is if they make a bad product that somebody gets sick off of and they get publicity for it, that takes down the company. We have to wait for someone to get sick first before a change is made, that kind of situation. Is there a company we can go in there with the trust already built in that we know that anything we buy will be potent and pure and safe? That's the basic concern that I have in regards to all these agencies. And there's a lot of folks, there are trappers that have excellent product out there. Mind you, they don't actually grow it. They just happened upon it. But the fact is, I'd like to know what the heck I'm putting in my body.
So hemp actually has some pretty good ground rules for regulation in the state of Florida. I think one of the biggest issues with Florida hemp is that it's an enforcement issue. You know what I mean? Like we hardly see these inspectors, right? But we pay for our permit and we follow our rules, and we're not, honestly, we're self-regulating for most of the time. So I think if the Department of Agriculture put in as much diligence as the Department of Health, I think we'd see a much better hemp industry in Florida. We'd see a lot of bad players out of the industry. I'll tell you that. Be a lot less Skittles packaging.
Well, I see a lot of MMTCs putting a lot of money into lobbyists to put in bills that will get them more profit. But I don't see them putting more money into lobbying that will make their products better, that will raise the bar, that kind of situation. And I would really like to see that happening. And one thing they like to see is, for God's sakes, I know that Wilton Simpson is not pro cannabis. I get that. The fact is, they've got very little actual funding for actual inspections. They just don't have the manpower to handle a inspection of the hemp industry as it stands here in the state of Florida.
Well, where do you get that funding from?
Well, for one thing, not spending it on taking migrants out of El Paso and dropping them off over in Martha's Vineyard, for God's sakes. I mean, that was money right there we could have used to take care of a lot of things.
You know, it always comes down to Florida could be great. Florida could be great. It's just these fucking politicians, man.
Well, you know, Carlos, we talk about politicians, but politicians listen to the industry and the folks that are writing checks to them. And so, you know, when we envision what we like to see a consumer-oriented industry, the fact is that the consumers come to us, right? And the average consumer, even if we pulled all, you know, a few bucks together, still pales into comparison to the $50 million that we see True Leave spending on lobbying expenditures. You know, so Tom, how does Green Dragon compete, or how do you all see yourselves or position yourselves to influence regulators and legislators when you have a competitor in the market that is essentially spending tens of millions of dollars so they can corner it?
That's a tough question, man. Really, I see. I don't know that it's our place to actually try to compete in that circumstance, to be honest with you. There is such a huge market here in Florida that what we'd rather do is focus on servicing the individual patient rather than trying to beat a competitor, and trust that, you know, that heart of service and value for the individual solving their medical condition is what's going to drive sales for us in the long run. As far as, you know, listen, a lot of that money that's being spent indirectly does have a positive benefit for our organization. So I can never denigrate somebody else for going out and trying to influence the way that legislation is created to benefit the cannabis industry, but that's just not our lane. You know, it's just not. We don't have the cash, the political wherewithal, or the tolerance to go out and play those games. What I'd love to see regulation change is in what we can provide for patients here in Florida. Things like mixed media, being allowed to bring in fractioned minor cannabinoids from outside of vertical integration and create more effective medicines. You know, those are the things that I would love, that I would wholeheartedly get behind lobbying, as opposed to, you know, what I see as kind of infighting among the community rather than benefiting the community.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because, you know, here at Suncoast Normal, Gary, myself, Carlos, our board, through patient input, community input, have put forward several bills that are actually going to be coming up this legislative session, and hopefully we can get hearings. We would love for you all to help influence. You know, there are things like expanding the number of qualifying conditions, you know, in the state of Florida, which would expand the customer base, but more than that, would give more legitimacy to a lot of the medical recommendations, rather than most folks having to be in like one of these 10 categories or a catch-all, if you will. The other thing is the fact that there's issues around people still getting fired from their jobs for being medical patients or precluded from jobs. Well, people don't have jobs, they can't buy your products, you know? So we hope that you all can help us and support us in that. There's also the issue of people losing their kids or having their medical marijuana status used against them in custody hearings. And that's another bill that we're bringing up this session. We also have written a bill to protect against your Second Amendment Amendment rights being infringed upon. Because the fact is that having cannabis in your house is like having gold in a lot of ways, and you got to protect yourself, and you shouldn't have to give up constitutional rights for the sake of being a medical marijuana patient. You shouldn't be kicked off an organ transplant list or denied medical care because you're a medical marijuana patient. These are all the issues that the politicians aren't paying attention to. And what irritates us is that you have truly spending this money to try and put the hemp businesses out of business, to corner the market, to be the first ones to be able to bring adult use, when they could be putting lobbying efforts and money into all these amazing things to improve the patient experience in this state. So we hope that you all at Green Dragon would not be like them and join us this legislative session in supporting those things. Can we count on y'all to help us support these patient-centric reforms?
You can always count on me to help support the lives of patients. So absolutely.
And we've got a lot of work ahead of us this next session. I have here the list of the bills that have been filed so far. There's a few more stragglers that still got to come in. The deadline was this last Friday, and there's a couple more that are still going through the paperwork session to get forward. But we do have some of our bills that are already currently filed. We have the employee protection bill, which has been filed by Senator Polsky, and the Senate version of the Parental Rights Protection Act, which has also been filed. And there is a House bill coming up for that. And we also have positive things, I think, in regards to bills for medical marijuana edibles that are just basically encouraging, make certain that you have truth in packaging, essentially. And those are good things. However, we also have other bills that don't seem to make much sense. Our dear friend, Dr. Masulo over in Citrus County, put out a bill which basically says that if and when an amendment passes through the ballot that allows for adult use, we're going to make it illegal, essentially. And I think that's kind of preemptive, don't you think? That being as it hasn't even been put on the ballot yet. But one thing that it did do is that there's another bill that was put out by the Senate through Colleen Burton, which does limit. It puts a cap on THC. Puts a cap. It eliminates the use of being able to do D8 and D9 and that kind of situation. And people are saying, "Oh, look, there's a Senate companion and there's a House companion." But, and I apologize for talking about the inside baseball here, being as Dr. Masulo's bill says, it doesn't actually take effect until if and when that bill passes through the ballot initiative. That is not officially a companion to the other one. And so therefore they are unrelated, and you have to have the bills on both sides of the House in order for it to go forward most of the time. Every once in a while there's an exception they can put in at the last minute, but generally they're just trying so hard to knock down the industry one way or the other, to turn it to a CBD only industry.
Gary, who's writing these bills? Because I know Dr. Masulo does not have the expertise as a legislator to know the ins and outs of the cannabis industry to write them. So who do you think is behind writing this shit legislation?
That's a good question, because I mean, in regards to the boof MMTCs that are trying to push this forward, they're all in favor of getting this adult use bill to go through, because they know darn well how it's going to impact their bottom line and top line and everything else.
Well, we know that it's not them, because they wouldn't support a THC cap. Like who wants to sell adult use with less than 10% THC?
Exactly right. I would have to assume that it would be the good folks who run the sober homes and the rehab facilities, because they want to have more customers. And perhaps it comes that way, but it is defying logic. But you can look into it and see which lobbyists are pushing it, and go from there and follow the money.
This is true. I do want to give a shout out to our friends at Florida Can and Senator Victor Torres for his bill, which will waive the card fee in Florida for veterans. And I know this is a bill that has come around many times. I'm hoping that this session it actually moves and gets passed. It doesn't make any sense for me that you put your life on the line for this country and you still got to dish out $75 for a medical marijuana card.
And Rep. Valdez has filed the House companion for that this year. So if it gets into committee, then that's a big if, then it can move forward. But it won't happen until our legislators get more input from their constituents saying, yes, I want to see this bill go through committee. Yes, this would make your constituents happy. And yes, we'll vote for you next term. That is basically what it comes down to. Is that's why we need more citizen involvement. I mean, we can get the ball rolling, but we can't make a strike with it unless you guys are pushing the ball down the lane. If I can use that metaphor a little farther.
Yeah, you're right, Gary. You know, folks, if you're listening to this and this is your first rotation, we've been at this, what, Carlos? This is our 10th year. It's kind of wild when you think about it. But the fact is that this started all in Carlos's garage, as a podcast, just to raise awareness of the issues that patients were going through, and to really refocus the medical marijuana fight off the politicians and off the personalities and onto the people who are actually suffering. And so, the show that we have today really has transformed and evolved, and we've only been able to do that because there are consumers out there, there are members out there who have joined Suncoast Normal, who support these reforms, and there are industry leaders like Tom that step up to the plate and become business members and sponsors at our different events and such, so we can continue to push this legislative agenda that's going to be patient-centric and patient-focused. And as we move forward into the 21st century, hopefully eventually prohibition gets struck down both at the federal level and at the state level. We can see some real reforms. We can see a real freedom in this country, because truth be told, there are so many other things that I would rather be doing than worrying about whether or not people get arrested for weed. I mean, we have an educational system in this country that needs addressing. We have an environmental crisis that needs addressing. There are tons of things I'm sure we would all rather be doing than having to worry about whether or not I have to spend 2 weeks a year in Tallahassee making sure that these guys don't screw up access to people's medicine. So it's we can't do this without you, the viewers and listeners.
Now, this is what I want to see as the industry goes forward. I mean, I live in an area right now. I had to move out of Wesley Chapel because it got too expensive, out to Hernando County, where the average grocery store is a Dollar General, whether you like it or not. In fact, I have $5 Generals within 5 miles of my store, but only one grocery store. It is essentially a food desert in that area. But the good thing is, as I found out, it's not just Trulieve and Sutera who happen to have dispensaries in Brooksville, which is the next largest city, but there actually happens to be a Green Dragon, which means that we are starting to get a breakthrough in the ability to choose and not just being forced to go with whatever is closest in that kind of situation. And I would be interested in knowing what can we expect from Green Dragon in regards to this market and moving forward.
I think that you're exactly right, Gary. What you're going to see from us is a lot more penetration into rural Florida. A lot of we're have this goal of having a large number of small stores that are more of the neighborhood cannabis store type thing, as opposed to just oversaturating major metropolitan areas with dispensaries. I don't need to be on a street with 5 other dispensaries. I'd rather be someplace where, hey, folks are right now having to drive an hour or an hour and a half to go and get the medicine that they need. Well, that's where we need to be. We also are really mindful of the fact that, if you look at this 860,000 patients, and you break down the demographics of that, the vast majority of that patient population has a per capita income of less than $40,000 annually. So, we also need to be cognizant of not only where are we putting those dispensaries, but how do we service that community most appropriately? Is it a port city where folks are paid on a monthly basis, and we have to try to find ways to help folks stretch their dollar. Yeah, look for us in a lot of more rural locations, but also the places where we're most needed, and trying to find ways to help those individual communities have the access that they need.
And it's also important to have quality at a decent price. Now, I mean, I'm not going to knock down certain MMTCs. I'm not going to say who their names are, Trulieve. But the fact is, they had products that were as much $60, $70 an eighth. Yeah. And the average person cannot afford that, plain and simple. I mean, especially Carlos, who goes through about an ounce for breakfast. I mean, it really gets expensive after a while.
It does, and
So
that's why
are we?
you'll see also
Tabs.
we're really pushing more into, larger format at lower prices. If I only have to pay for one set of packaging, I can make something much more affordable if I'm selling, a half ounce at a time instead of, 4/8. So yeah, I think that it really how we are constantly stretching ourselves to try and find ways to make things more affordable and improve quality at that price point.
So essentially, cannabis for the everyman.
Yeah. I almost also think of it as, table cannabis for many of our lines. We have a higher end line as well, but we want to be the stuff that you can afford to consume every day.
Like your basic German Topflveen, your basic the table wine, which is the go-to.
Yeah.
I like to smoke on my couch instead of the table.
This is why you have those holes in the couch.
No, I mean, you bring up a great point, Gary, around price points and such. Up here in the DMV, price points, ounces, depending on what you want, can go anywhere between $60 to 400. It depends on what you're looking for. Like Tom says, is there is a special occasion? It's no different than wine in a lot of ways. You can get an $8-9 bottle of wine at Walgreens and drink it every day, or you can spend that $200 bottle, that you get at Total Wine that is more higher end, and that's grown in France and that sort of thing.
And there's always $2 Chuck. We're not, but when California started getting more what they call boutique strains and having boutique stores, and basically saying that you've got to come in with a Maserati to know that you can afford the product that's in there, that's very off-putting, as it were, because there are ways you can get better quality for less price. And it shouldn't have to be just from the legacy market.
I want to say, we definitely need to cater to people that can't afford boutique strains. But personally, I like to feel like I'm better than everybody because I smoke high priced cannabis.
Well, you are better than everybody.
Thank you.
No problem.
It's something that's never really made a hell of a lot of sense to me.
I am wearing a cookie shirt, guys.
Why does a boutique strain command a higher price? I mean, you put the same amount of work and the same amount of nutrients and the same amount of packaging cost into a boutique strain as you do into a large producing strain. So, I mean, every MMTC is a big fan of things like 9 Pound Hammer or, Wedding Cake, because they're big yielders, right? But it doesn't cost me any more to produce, an exotic strain than it does to produce a big yielder. So we really focus on, when we have something that's a higher price, it's because it requires more actual physical work, a hand trim, a hand pack, a hand weigh, as opposed to doing all those things in an automated fashion. Well, that's more people are involved. It's a higher price. It's not because, hey, you know what, this came out at 33%, so we're going to put a high price on it because, people will pay it because it's 33%. Did I put any more work into making that 33% cannabis? No, I didn't. So it really shouldn't, in the end, command a premium at the patient's from the patient's wallet. It just shouldn't.
That
Unless you go with the De Beer method and just go strictly with scarcity, which could always be manufactured into the product itself.
It can, and that's
no,
not exactly the most ethical way of doing business.
Yeah, Gary, you bring up a good point. I mean, there are entire beaches in South Africa where the diamonds are just there, they're like naturally. But same with cannabis. There's entire places in this country where the seeds, it just grows wild. So artificial inflation and on price fixing is definitely something that we see in a lot of industries. I want to go back to Tom. You mentioned about production. With the level 2 background checks that folks have to pass, do you find the ability to get master grow talent that has been in the industry challenging, or has it been easy to find master level growers of cannabis who just maybe haven't been caught? Is that an issue? Because for some folks, on the surface, it seems like, well, some of the best cannabis growers probably have some type of record, therefore they wouldn't be able to work in a Florida dispensary.
It's a challenge, and I would say not just at the master grower level, but at every level of employment, especially. We grow in a relatively rural community where there isn't a huge workforce, so the ability to pass a level 2 background check is constantly interfering. As far as master growers or lead cultivation talent. We're fortunate that our founder, one of our founders, was a legacy grower who did not have any convictions, and so Kelly has been guiding us through all the administrations of creating a quality cannabis grow in Florida, and we're fortunate to have him. Um, I think we do see a lot of folks at that level who spent a lot of time growing out of the country. So if they did have any run-ins with the law, they just don't happen to pop on a level 2. But yeah, I mean, there certainly is a big hole in the talent network that's caused by the fact that some of the best folks in this industry have spent time in prison.
Do you guys really like you guys employ people that like grew out of state or out of the country?
Of course.
Yeah, sweet.
Well, there you hear it. Green Dragon is not producing that booth, y'all. If y'all want to try some quality stuff, check them out at their 37 locations across the state.
Man, Tom, you just made me want to watch Narcos, bro.
Well, we can only hope that things get better. I do want to note. I noticed that Ease was was a major player in getting Green Dragon back on its feet again after they stumbled into the Florida market. And in California, Ease is the go-to just delivery service for so many people, and they really appreciate their approaches towards it. Do you see that changing the delivery market here in Florida?
I do, and we want to change the delivery dynamic here in Florida so that it's much more similar to what we do in California. You can Ease in California, for those who've never experienced it, is very much a DoorDash type experience. You place your order and it's you're getting a knock on the door within an hour. And we really want to be able to do that here in Florida, where so much of the delivery experience here has been, okay, well, I'll place an order on Monday and I might get it on Thursday or Friday. And that's not really effective for a lot of folks. But we are going to need to see some changes to the manner in which delivery is permitted in Florida. And really that involves us being able to carry rolling stock within our delivery vehicles, as opposed to having to dispense from the dispensary and then take it out to the end user. So yeah, watch for us to continue to develop in terms of delivery, but I would say within a year we should really be able to bring that Ease type delivery experience into Florida.
And is there anything you'd like to say as we're wrapping things up here? Because I know Chris has got some news coming up. That you'd like to say about Green Dragon, or how people can get a hold of you, or if they're expanding into your area, how they could look for employment?
Yeah, certainly we post all of our job listings on Indeed. So certainly encourage folks to take a look at our Indeed page, and constantly hiring dispensary staff, constantly hiring cultivation and production staff in our Palatka facility. So certainly come be part of our team. We'd love to have you, and we need help always. Aside from that, yeah, I would say we entered the market, as you said, poorly. And we understand that now, and we understand that we tried to go too far too fast with really lousy cannabis, and we've made the changes. We're putting out some really incredible weed now. I mean, take a look at, for example, the Burnt Orange Cookie or Eden's Fire that we just dropped last week. Both incredible batches of cannabis that I'd take the Pepsi Challenge against anything in Florida with. So I would say if you tried us before and we disappointed, give us another shot, because we understand what we did wrong. And
so I shouldn't expect any sex grenade coming out anytime soon.
There's still some in cultivation, but it's we're really trying to extract that strain more than sell it as flower.
Well, I'm excited to smoke Green Dragon cannabis now after hearing that, because that really shows that you guys are trying to bring value. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing what we can, and we really want to be part of this community and service the patients and make sure that they get what they need.
Well, we appreciate you, Tom, and we appreciate your candor and just keeping it real with us. I think patients really do want to see that from the corporate side of things these days. It's just, if there were mistakes made in the past that you may have culpa, that you make right by the people, and we appreciate you doing that. And again, we appreciate your support in this upcoming legislative session and in the future, because again, your customers are our members, and we want to make sure that it works out for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think it's time for the news. Carlos? All right. So 2024 is here. And with that being said, there are tons of cannabis laws taking shape all around the country. But first and foremost, Colorado has been at it for a decade now. And the world has not been set on fire. Colorado is booming. For those of you who have been out there recently, there's tons of new growth, development, tax revenues coming in. The cannabis industry has really, truly benefited that state. But coming out of California, some great news. Californians that partake in cannabis use in their off-work downtime will now have more employment protections. Assembly Bill 2188 had an amendment to the state's Fair Employment and Housing Act, which prohibits employers from discriminating against workers who test positive for non-psychoactive cannabis metabolites in their urine, hair, or body fluids. Put simply, this means that anyone who does not display evidence of active THC in their system will be protected. Therefore, people who use cannabis on the weekends cannot be penalized when they return to work on Monday. The fact is that cannabis is known to stay in your system and store metabolites for quite lengthy periods of time, especially since it's stored in your fat cells and it's fat soluble. The heavier you are, the longer it's in your system, and can be on drug screenings anywhere from 90 to 120 days, depending on how it is in your fat cells. That being said, that this law does not interfere with an employer's right to maintain a drug-free workplace. It also does not apply to those who work in building or construction trades, or those who are subject to federal drug testing rules, such as truck drivers. The fact is that cannabis in adult use states is a reality. And what we're seeing is that as those adult use states realize the shortcomings of prohibition and public policy, they're addressing these things. And then you look at news coming out of Montreal, Canada. An analysis in the Journal of Drug Safety showed that few patients authorized to consume medical cannabis products actually report experiencing serious side effects. McGill University researchers took a cohort of nearly 3,000 Canadian medical cannabis patients. Out of those 3,000, only about 4% reported experiencing any marijuana-related adverse events. The most frequently reported side effects are dizziness, somnolence, headaches, nausea, and vomiting. Of course, we know that a lot of ways when you experience vomiting when it comes to consuming high-quality cannabis, it has a lot to do with your diet and whether or not you're eating healthy. Because, of course, cannabis is an immunoregulator. If you put poison in your body and you consume really good cannabis, your body will tell you you have poisoned yourself and make you throw it up. Looking at also data that was been recently published in Frontiers in Pain Research coming out of Miami, Florida, researchers affiliated with the University of Miami surveyed 227 spinal cord patients with a history of cannabis use. 88% reported that cannabis reduced their neuropathic pain intensity by more than 30%. In addition, 47% said that they consumed cannabis in lieu of opioids. Most patients reported that cannabis also played a role in reducing their stress, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. So again, when they say we need to study this more, there's not enough studies. The fact is that there have been over 30,000 studies in the last decade on cannabis and cannabinoids. I got to give a shout out to the folks out there in Washington State. Democratic Governor Jay Inslee recently signed a law in May, which makes it unlawful for an employer to discriminate against a person in the initial hiring for employment if the discrimination is based upon the person's use of cannabis off the job and away from from the workplace, or an employer-required drug screening test has found that the person to have non-psychoactive cannabis metabolites in their hair, blood, urine, or other bodily fluids. So again, the same thing that's happening in California is now also happening in Washington State. So again, we're seeing
that was
employment.
Washington State.
Yes, cannabis and yes, Washington State and California both have adopted employment protections for adult use.
Great.
Yeah,
Good to hear that. You can't discriminate against cannabis users.
yeah. And one thing when it comes to cannabis users, who are cannabis users? In the famous Peter Tosh song, "Doctors smoke it, judges smoke it, nurses smoke it." You know who smokes it? Veterans. A recent survey coming out of Ohio State University saw that a supermajority of veterans and their members of their families support amending the federal law so that VA doctors may issue medical cannabis authorizations. Investigators surveyed the attitudes of 315 active veteran and military personnel and 426 military family members. 79% of veteran respondents and 92% of family members say VA doctors should legally be allowed to recommend medical marijuana if the doctor believes the patients could benefit from it. Currently, under federal law, VA doctors may not recommend medical cannabis, even if they reside in a state where it is legal, causing veterans to have to spend, again, $75 in Florida for a medical card, anywhere in between $500 and $600 a year to maintain that card, to go to outside physician. Which, if you're a veteran on a fixed income, especially as an enlisted man, that is definitely an economic hit that you can't necessarily afford. So, contact your representatives and tell them that you believe that, veterans should have the right, VA doctors should have the right to recommend medical cannabis to our vets. Now, we talk about we talked about earlier in the show, the politicians always go to the old age. What about the kids? And then, of course, we're there in Ybor City, where the studio is. Prohibition essentially started because Victor Licata axe murdered his family, and they found a nickel bag of weed in his sock drawer. So that being said, data published in the International Journal of Drug Policy showed an analysis where a Canadian team of researchers examined regional changes in health services and incidences of psychotic disorders during the months immediately following legalization. And the report is they did not find any evidence of increase in health service use or incident cases of psychotic disorders over a 17-month period following cannabis legalization. Legalization is not associated with any spikes in incidences of marijuana-related psychosis. So that being said, cannabis has a lot of medical benefits. Looking at data published in the journal Heart Rhythm, cannabis use is not associated with an elevated risk of atrial fibrillation. Investigators from the University of California, San Francisco assessed the relationship between cannabis and AFib, irregular heartbeat, in a cohort of more than 150,000 subjects between the ages of 40 and 69. That cohort included non-users, occasional users, and frequent users. And researchers found no evidence that subjects who use cannabis were more likely than non-users to suffer irregular heartbeats. Irregular heartbeat is associated with an increased risk of stroke and other cardiovascular events. For years, we've been told, hey, cannabis use causes brain damage. Well, that goes back to a two-lane monkey study where they basically gas for 5 minutes straight cannabis smoke into monkeys, and then they examined their brains after they died on autopsy and found they had brain damage. Well, the fact is that study in the 70s did not have an accompanying oxygen supply. They basically suffocated these poor monkeys, caused the brain damage, and then blamed it on cannabis. And you have heard, this is your brain on weed for throughout the 70s and 80s and even 90s. And the fact is that Michelangelo was always high, and I'm ashamed of the Ninja Turtles for trying to tell me not to smoke weed when clearly they always had the munchies.
I am so sick and tired of these prohibitionists fucking suffocating monkeys. When will it stop? No, hear me out on this, guys. Hear me out on this. All right. I've got a solution to the whole kid thing. All right. It's probably going to take a little bit of prep work, but with all the people who consume cannabis that have children, right? I think it's very important to point out that these kids aren't going to get hurt. So all the people that smoke cannabis and have children, we all get our kids high at the same time, right? And then when
The views of Carlos Ramita do not reflect the views of the normal board as a whole or on this program. They are his opinions and his opinions alone.
Hear me out. Hear me out. Because what happens? We hear about the calls to the Center of Disease Control,
Yes.
right? We hear about people taking their kids to the hospital because they ate their brownie or their gummy or whatever, right? But what happens? Nothing happens. They, at worst, the kid's stomach gets pumped. At the best, right?
Carlos,
The
did your
kid-
dad
the
force
kid
you to
eats
smoke an
fun-
entire cigar? Caught you smoking in the back.
The
Is that
kid
one of
the
those
kid
things?
eats a bag of Funyuns and has an Arizona iced tea and takes a nap, watches some cartoons. I've seen it a million times.
Carlos, did you go to public school in grade school?
I went to public school.
You remember that big a field day? Everybody would like get under that big drape, and everybody played it like hot box inside of that. Is that we say it was kindergarten hot box?
They can't. This isn't. They can't take all their kids away. All right, they just can't do it.
Okay,
Right.
well,
And when all these goddamn politicians see that the kids are actually probably better, probably smarter, probably drew a cool picture or something, then it'll all go away.
while we're on the
I
subject
see
of
nothing wrong with it.
while we're on the subject of policies we don't actually support, Carlos, I should mention, because it was out and about on Instagram and all that this week, that with some clips from the rotation, that people should go ahead and boycott True Leave. Now, you know how we feel about True Leave. We don't really hold back on that kind of situation. Do we actually support a boycott? That is actually up to you guys. We cannot endorse a boycott as normal as a 401c. Whatever we are.
C4.
Yes, before.
Well, Gary, let me touch on that. We cannot support a boycott officially as normal because we do not have the finances to go against True Leave in court. All right. If they got $50 million to blow on lobbying and politicians, then they got plenty of money to try and sue us. And so therefore, we toe the line with our free speech a lot of times. But yes, there is a current boycott going around the internet and a call to action to boycott True Leave for, not only their attacks on mom and pop hemp industries and trying to outlaw them, but also for their shitty booth that they've been producing to patients. For what is that now? What are we going on? 7 years.
Yeah,
7 years. The Florida cannabis industry.
7 years of hot dog water.
Yeah. So and blasting moldy bud into concentrates.
Yeah.
So
That's one of the
And
things.
soaking
that
everything with the limonene.
the hemp industry needs better regulations. I mean,
Saying,
come
doesn't
on,
it smell nice, smell like
moldy
lemon
hot wild
pledge?
water.
Well, look, this session, they've already drawn the lines, right? And where to distract us. They're going to go after the hemp industry again. They're going to try and cap THC when it comes to the adult use market. Will that go anywhere? Gary already pointed out the bills don't line up. But the fact is that those are distractions to actually prevent you all from focusing on what is important. Gary, run us down one more time. What bills do we have sponsors on? These are the bills that we need you all to push. There will be a call to action coming out later this week, and we need you all to contact your legislators when you get it. Send that email, make those phone calls, and then we'll talk a little bit about our lobby days coming up shortly. But Gary, run us the bills one more time.
Okay, well, we got SB 116, which is 166 rather, which is Senator Polsky's bill for us for the protection for public employees, so that they don't lose their job or aren't getting a job because they have to be cannabis users, which is very important. No, I'm not.
You just realized that.
Yeah, but the fact is, we feel it is so important that there should be no nexus between just having a medical card and using cannabis medicinally and your ability to work. It should be strictly on your performance, and that's the way it should be. And so the law is basically showing the fact that if you have a disabling condition, which is the reason you'd be taking cannabis, therefore you should be allowed access at work because they're supposed to give you accommodations. That's basically where it comes to. And we had to go with public employees first because this is a public employee bill. And it's going to the state legislature, and we can't always push private industry to do what they should be doing. But setting this precedent will go very, very far. We also have SB 1496, which is the Protection of Parental Rights bill, which basically says that the Department of Children and Families cannot petition the courts to take your kids away just because you have a medical cannabis card. It has to be something else that's going on right there, abuse of the children, that kind of situation. But just having cannabis in the house and keeping it away from the kids so they don't have access to it, there is no reason there for them to go through a termination of parental rights. And the same thing goes true with custody battles as well. If you happen to be somebody who needs to use cannabis for PTSD, you're not going to lose custody of your kids if that is the only thing in there, that the only box that DCF can check off. And I've been told that we also have people who are going to be supporting our medical protection bill, which keeps you from losing the chance to be on a transplant list or having your medicine taken away when you're in an institution. And we have other bills that we did not get filed. However, we are planning on trying to move them forward as amendments for other bills, and we'll talk about those as well. But this is important because there actually is some actual movement towards positive bills. There's actually 2 Republicans that have pushed a bill for one called corporate income tax by Rodriguez, and the other one, I think, I forget who had the House bill. But basically what this says is it gets around the 408E restrictions. That basically says that you can deduct your expenses in making cannabis on your taxes if you are an MMTC, which is going against the federal law. And we'll see how far that goes as far as protection is concerned. So we have a lot that we can move forward, some of which is already out there, some of which is ours, and we hope to have you with us. Now, we do have an event coming up on January the 16th in Tallahassee, where you can be talking directly to our legislators. Is that right, Chris?
Yes. So, we have Martin Luther King Day coming up, which is Monday, January 15th, which will give folks the opportunity to have a travel day. We are partnering with our colleagues at the Florida Cannabis Action Network for Cannabis at the Capitol. And so, of course, you can check out their website. They have a number of different events. Some are ticketed, some are free to attend that we have available. But the fact is that at the Capitol on the 16th, that Tuesday on the 3rd floor rotunda, you have the opportunity to come by the table and see folks, engage with your legislators all day, touching base with folks and making sure that they know that you as a constituent support this. The one thing that politicians love in Tallahassee is to see their constituents actually show up to the process and engage. If you want to give a call ahead of time, so that way you're not just dropping in, that they have you on the schedule so you can actually get 5 or 10 minutes with the legislator or the actual aide. All in all, again, Gary touched on these amazing bills. Also, there's some bad bills that are out there that we don't want to see move forward. The legislature in Florida is highly dominated by Republicans. So if you are a conservative cannabis user, if you are a Republican in this state, you're a normal member. We want you to leverage your voice, because your voice actually has a bigger impact in a lot of ways than some of us bleeding heart liberals, as we always get flat for on this show. Regardless of political affiliations of any of us personally, the fact is that we want to support legislators that support us, and we want to make sure that a patient-centric system is something that we have in Florida, and that the industry players are doing right by the patients. Again, I do want to say a thank you to Tom for coming on today from Green Dragon, setting the record straight with the things that have happened in regards to the industry and what they've experienced over there on their side, and being willing to support us and what we got going on. And again, if you're someone who doesn't like the way things are going and the way things are being influenced by 1 or 2 particular major players in this industry, you as a consumer have the right to essentially take your business elsewhere. In this country, we have the right to vote, but we take that for granted. Carlos said, Americans are very lazy. We've said it the whole show. The fact is that we are not lazy when it comes to voting, because we vote with our dollars every single day. And so who you choose to spend your money with is a vote. Is you exercising your power as an American? We have a capitalist system that really is on display. And if you want to show the politicians, you want to show the industry and the powers that be how you truly feel, Vote with your pocketbook, vote with your dollars, take your business to places that are going to support you as a patient and that are going to support, you as a consumer, rather than thinking that you're dumb enough to pay $80 for an eighth like you're some rich frat boy in college.
And I should also add that that particular day, January 16th, is also another important day because it is the day of the special election for Congressional House District 35 over in
Yes.
Orlando, which in used to be in Orlando County, and they moved it at about a year and a half ago to be Kissimmee and parts west of there. And we actually have a candidate that we highly, highly support, who is the Democratic candidate there, who is absolutely superior.
And a Suncoast Normal member. He is a paid dues paying member of this chapter.
Tom Keene, if you're out there, we support you, and we will be there anytime you ask us to, because we need more people to be our voices for us on the floor of the House where we can't go.
The polls are now open for early voting. If you live in House District 35 in the Orlando or Osceola County area, by all means, get out there, cast your vote for Tom Keene. He is a veteran. He's a Suncoast Normal member. He has a common sense policy when it comes to addressing the issues that consumers face in Florida, whether it's to do with cannabis or insurance, property taxes, and he's a hell of a lot better than the person who's running across the aisle who just spits out talking points from their party and has no real platform. So again, Tom Keene, House District 35, a special election going on right now. Get out there, get out and vote. This will give us the opportunity to have another ally and an actual Suncoast Normal member in the Florida House. We can really get some shit done with Tom in there. So we really appreciate you all going out there, spreading the word and voting for Tom Keene this election.
Now, you notice I did not give his opponent's name. That's fine with me. That is one less thing you have to worry about. Just look for Tom Keene's name on the ballot.
Exactly.
And if you see somebody whose picture makes them look like they're actually an anchor on Fox News, don't vote for him.
Well, look, team, it has been awesome being back in the rotation. Next week I won't be able to join you due to constraints. I'm in a new role now at work as a director of political and legislative affairs for the second largest labor union in the country at one of its locals here in the DMV. So we definitely got a lot of work to get done. In addition to all the great work that we do at Normal, I'm also on our national board, and we're continuing to push through as well. We're just trying to move this organization, which has been around for 50 years. And I do want to give a shout out to the founder of Normal, Keith Stroop, who just celebrated his 80th birthday. And actually this week in Harlem, New York, we're going to be having a birthday celebration. You can actually go on and check it out. If you want to be a part of that, it is a ticketed event where all the proceeds will go to the Normal Foundation to continue to support the great work that Normal has done for the next 50 years. And so, understanding that, we really appreciate Keith and his time as the founder. He's also still active as the chief general counsel and our lawyer for National Normal at the national level. But the fact is he's 80 years old. And so as the baton passes to a new generation, I want Keith to know that, we as Suncoast Normal and all the Normal chapters across the country will continue to do the great work that he started all the way back in the 70s. And we're going to finally accomplish the mission of ending prohibition and protecting the civil rights of cannabis users. And so
be sure to check out the show he did with us in our archives, where he gives us a wealth of information on the history of Normal and where they intend to go forward, with your help, of course.
Yeah. So again, like, follow, and share. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe. If you're watching us on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, please like and share, comment, and of course, become a member. We cannot do this without everyday folks like you. You can go to suncoastnormal.org and become a member. If you have a business and you want to join our business network, reach out to us. Hit us up through the website or on social media, and we'll work to get your business advertised on our website and as part of our business network as well. All of our members get free admission to our member-led events, which we have, quite a few every year. We got one that's going to be coming up in the spring, the Best Blunt hunt, debate, rolling competition. So be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you very much for all the support for the past 10 years to this chapter, to this show. And Gary, Carlos, I just want to say that we cannot do this without you and the amazing members on our board, all the amazing ladies. Shout out to Carla, Sue, Kelly, and Tiffany, all the ladies that are behind the scenes and out there at the different events making it happen with us. So it's not just us three bozos that make it happen, but there is an amazing group of talented women behind the board of Suncoast Normal as well.
And by the way, Carla is recovering from surgery right now. So you get a Jewish prayer from me and a Catholic prayer from Chris, and from Carlos you get a celebratory dab. So we offer all of our thoughts and prayers and dabs for you. And one other thing, I understand that head of Weed for Warriors, Jimmy Johnson, was in some kind of car fire this last week. I don't know what his condition is right now, but again, the best. All of our thoughts and prayers for you.
Yeah, speedy recovery to Jimmy, man. I'm glad it all worked out. I'm glad he's still here with us. That just goes to show that the universe has other plans. There's still a lot of work to do, Jimmy, and get rest up because we got some ass kicking to do, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jimmy's the type of guy you want in the movement because he ain't afraid to call people out on their shit. And yeah, he keeps me on my toes, keeps everybody on their toes. So best recovery to him because we need him.
Program note: while Chris is not going to be here next week, we do have folks from Florida Boys who are fantastic purveyors of cannabis as a edible commodity. They actually make infused sugar, infused monk fruit, as well as infused cotton candy and a bunch of other products in regards to food. And they also do it through those products that are derived from hemp in a nature where you actually have a certificate of authenticity. So we are grateful to those guys being out in the industry, and they'll be talking to you next week.
Nice, Gary. That sounds like fun. I look forward to the day where you can get a giant bag of infused cotton candy at the Florida State Fair and just walk around stoned all day, just munching on that. That's an amazing future to look forward to.
Yeah, much better than walking around with a beer.
Well, we'll catch y'all next week.